it forces you to rethink the things that you take for granted and the objects that you take for granted. Like, it's so embedded in your brain what a bedroom chair looks like or what a coat hanger looks like. And once you start questioning that and being like, okay, but how could it be different? It forces you to use so many parts of your brain and kind of go further back down the design tree. And I think what's really cool about that is you realize that all the objects we have around us are mostly just things that people made up. And you can be one of the people that makes those objects up.
Yeah.
My name is Simone Giertz. I am from Stockholm, Sweden, and my job is that I am an inventor and YouTuber.
What are you excited about what you're doing right now in this phase of Simone Giertz?
First of all, I'm excited for this helicopter to pass. There you go. It's been 10 years, or we're going on 11 years, and I think the thing I'm most excited about is that I feel like I'm in a completely new chapter of my career. I mean, I came up on the internet building like robot comedy. I mean, the technical term is robots, but you could beep that. It was such a fun age and era to go through. And then I kind of got tired of it and was like, what do I do next? And I was really interested in product design, and I started a product business and got into manufacturing. And it's just been so cool to feel like I get to have this other chapter of my career that feels as big and important as that did.
That's lovely. What has you excited generally, like it right now as a creator?
It feels like the world is our build oyster. In a lot of ways. Like, there are so many new tools that are coming on the market. I just got this really cool UV printer so I can print really complex things. And that has me really excited. I think anything that kind of expands my world of making is really cool. And I think also it's just so fun to see everybody's storytelling on the internet.
Yeah.
I can hate on my internet feeds as much as I want, but there's also just so many incredibly talented, creative people out there. And I think that there's just a lot to be inspired by that other people are doing. People are doing more random stuff than ever before.
Yes, very true.
I want to think, at least.
I feel like at least I'm seeing a lot more random stuff that people are doing than ever before.
Yeah. And I think like the internet has given us a stage for random stuff and a purpose for random stuff in a way. It's just a really fun time to have a whimsical brain.
That's great. And to kind of like dig a little deeper into that, like what do you love about that process of invention and coming up with these things?
The thing I love about inventing things is that there's nothing that I know that is equal parts as humbling and empowering as trying to bring an idea to life. Like, there's nothing that will make me feel as beaten down and at the same time as incredibly powerful and like a wizard as having an idea and being like, how do I bring this to life? And I just think it's so cool to have a sketch on paper and then when you're actually able to hold the object in your hand. Like, that is magic. I mean, it's high effort magic, but it's still magic.
Definitely. I was looking at some interviews that you did online, and I thought there was an interesting thing you said about how when you were starting out, you were working at an electronics company in San Francisco, and that context just didn't feel right for you. Could you tell me a little bit more about like what you meant by that and like how you found your way to where you are and liking what you do?
I think so much about finding yourself has to do with finding the context in which your weaknesses are strengths. And I experienced that a lot in work. So I remember I had a government job and I kept on telling myself that like, okay, I need to be okay with that things are moving really slowly. Like, I need to not just like bop around constantly. I need to be fine with that. And then I was like, or maybe I should find a job where it's a benefit that I can handle a lot of change and uncertainty. And I had that the same at the electronics company. It was such a fun job. But I had a hard time getting excited about other people's ideas and other people's products. Like
Yeah.
creative ownership means a lot to me. And you can put whatever value you want on that of like, oh, maybe I have a big ego. But instead of beating myself up about that, it's like embrace it and make the context in which that is a strength. And when there's something that I have creative ownership of, I just kick into high gear in a different way. And I had a hard time getting that enthusiastic when working for somebody else's business.
That makes sense. And kind of along that line, something else that you've spoken about is creative integrity. And, being a content creator, knowing that growth is a part of it and views and da-da-da, but then also making things that feel true to you. Like, I wonder about like how you balance those things and how you would define creative integrity.
For me, creative integrity is making sure that I am proud of the things I'm putting out and that I'm at the core creating things for myself. And then it's my job to find an audience who likes those things as well. So instead of trying to like cater to an audience or to a customer base, I'm like, okay, this is something I think is awesome. Let's try to find the people who also think that is awesome. I think navigating that and still staying true to what you want to do is really important. And that's part of why I stopped building robots, because it didn't feel right anymore. I felt like I had to fake my enthusiasm.
Why did it turn out that way?
I learned how to build things on YouTube. Like, I don't have a degree of any sort, and definitely did not study robotics in school. I came at it from a very like hands up kind of way of like, I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to build machines. And I think as my skills grew, I started to feel like I was kind of beating myself down a bit. I was like making myself smaller and dumber than I actually am. So I feel like I outgrew that shtick. Also just getting older. It's like we're having these long careers on the internet. And of course, the thing that feels really right when you're 26 isn't going to feel really right when you're 36. And I think also something that played into it was that I went through really severe health problems. I had a brain tumor and I went through brain surgery. And that was a period that was very severe. I mean, as much as there was a lot of humor in that as well, I didn't necessarily feel like making myself to a clown on the internet. I felt ready to actually stand by the things I was building and not be like, oh my God, this sucks so much. Look how silly I am. And that is really scary. Like, it's really scary to be like, hey, I made something that I think is actually good. It was the natural progression for me, and for me to feel like what I was doing online was aligned with who I actually am.
I'm curious about your relationship to this kind of self-taught nature that you have. And we're a science publication, so many of the things that we're asking people are about, their relationship to traditional science and academia. What would you say is your relationship to that institution? And like, would you call yourself a science communicator at all? And I don't know.
I mean, growing up, I really wanted to be a biologist. Like, I wanted to study animal behavior. That was my big dream. And I think it could have worked out, but I think the rigidity of scientific institutions maybe wouldn't have been super conducive. Like, I think I would have gotten a very frustrated of like, why can't I just do it? Why do I have to wait for approvals and funds and things like that? I think in terms of science communication, I've always thought of my videos as thoroughly uneducational. Like, I don't teach anybody anything, really. It's not a how-to guide. It's not like, okay, let's learn about this mechanism or this engineering phenomenon. But I think what you maybe could see them as is, as much as I hate the word, inspirational. If you learn these skills, this is what you could do. And I'm hoping that what I'm showing is a different example of engineering that most people are used to.
Yeah. Could you speak a little bit more about that kind of like idea to finished product process? Like what makes your process unique?
What makes my process unique is how much I struggle. I think, I don't know, I call it flailing forward because I feel like I'm just like, how do I do this? But usually the way it starts is that I have an idea that I'm interested in, and that can be a problem or an object that I'm interested in exploring, and then I put it on my list of ideas, and I let it fester there for a little bit, and then start sketching, and usually I'm going to spend a couple of weeks turning it into a project for YouTube. And then at the end of that, if I think that the project has product potential, or if I see that the audience reaction is really positive, I can pass it over to the design for manufacturing team and the product team. So basically be like, okay, let's explore designing this for manufacturing and making sure that we can manufacture it at scale. And then once we're ready to sell it to customers, then I can take it back to the YouTube channel and be like, hey, you can buy it now. But usually that's like 2 years later. So everybody has forgotten about it at that point.
I think the thing I want to know about is how you take delight from the science and engineering aspects of your work.
The main thing that I take delight from is that I can abuse the tools in ways that people in other contexts can't. Like there's such a disregard for both engineering and scientific principles. And there are a lot of creative liberties that I can take because I'm just doing it in my backyard. So I think that is probably one of the things. But I think there's just something that is so delightful about being able to apply things in ways that other people wouldn't. I remember when I worked at that electronics company in San Francisco, like the electrical engineers there to me were like superheroes because they held all the secrets and the things that I wanted to learn. And I was like, oh my God, you can build anything. Like, what are you using these skills for? And they're like, eh. And I think that is the thing that really delights me is being able to take these skills and apply them in ways that people don't expect.
Yeah. Would you say that like most of how you gained this experience was just through trial and error, like figuring it out on your own?
For sure. It's just throwing the kitchen sink at it and being incredibly frustrated. And I think if there's anything that people might take away from my videos is that when you're going off-road in the sense that like you're building without a manual, it's really messy and it's not pretty. Like I feel like a lot of other people's build videos are incredibly pretty and thoughtful and everything joins perfectly. And I feel like for me, it's such a process of frustration and jubilation. And yeah, it's really, there's nothing clean about it.
Yeah. I think there might be benefits to that maybe in terms of like you learning or something. Would you say there are?
Yeah, because it's all about building that resilience, the kind of grit to keep on trying. I think about this a lot in terms of how I want to be as a person, both in my work but also in my personal life, is that the hardest material in the world is diamonds, but it's not the strongest material in the world or the toughest material in the world, because if you hit a diamond with a hammer, it will shatter. Instead, the toughest material in the world is something like a rubber because it'll deform and it'll bounce back. And I really aspire to be rubber. It's like, yeah, I'm soft and I will take impact and I'll get beaten up, but I won't shatter. I'll bounce back and I'll figure out a way to adapt and to reshape and to kind of overcome all the problems that life throws at me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What have been some of the challenges that you have overcome? Like, has gatekeeping been a thing? Has being a public persona been a thing? Like, what are the challenges that have kind of you've had to get around?
I think overall, life has been incredibly kind to me. I've been so lucky in that, like, I was raised in a really amazing family with very supportive parents. The internet has been weirdly kind to me. Like, I have the nicest comment sections of any place I've seen. I think the challenges that I've had have mostly been internal. And one of those was that I used to struggle with really severe performance anxiety.
Like for your videos or?
No, for grades in school. So I was like completely, if I got a B on a test, I would cry. I was so mortified of failing or of not performing. I still have like going bowling with friends is one of my biggest nightmares because I get such bad performance anxiety. And I'm like, what if I make a fool out of myself? And I think that like navigating around that has been really tricky. And like learning how to forgive myself for being imperfect has been really tricky. And I think one of the mantras that I've adopted is like, I'm so proud of myself for trying. And whenever I do something that didn't really go my way, or if I go bowling with friends, or if I do this thing, I'm like, you know what? The big failure would be if I was too scared to try. And I'm so proud of myself for trying. I think that has probably been one of the biggest like mental hurdles to overcome. And now I think of it like the way I phrased it the other day is that I'm a Ravenclaw who's letting herself be in her Hufflepuff era.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm definitely like Ravenclaw, but I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm just going to be in my Hufflepuff self and dilly-dally in the workshop. So
a Ravenclaw I think that's gone to therapy.
Yeah, pretty much. It is like, you know what? It's okay to do things because they're fun. And it doesn't have to like that things are hard or prestigious doesn't necessarily mean that they're more important. And that was the whole mindset that led me down this path, and that I have this like career that I never imagined that I would get to have. Like I'm so incredibly lucky, but it's all because I let myself and I was fortunate enough to be able to let myself just do things because they were fun and because I thought that they were interesting, but without having like a goal with them necessarily.
Something that I really find compelling about the kinds of projects that you've been taking on lately, like I was watching the fruit bowl video and their laundry chair, of course, like they're really solving like legitimate problems that people have run into every day. It's not divided by like, you know, class or whatever. Like it's they're problems that people I feel like didn't even realize there could be a solution for, but they're so common. Why is that type of thing really creatively exciting to you to like solve those problems?
I think I'm a combination of incredibly lazy and incredibly ambitious, because there are these little mundane problems where I'm like, yeah, with the fruit bowl, I got frustrated because I always felt like my fruit bowl was too small or too big. And it's like, yeah, I could just switch out my fruit bowls and have 3 of them, depending on, but I'm like, no, I'm going to spend years, literally years, developing this fruit bowl that mechanically changes size depending on how much fruit you have. But it's just such a fun place to be in because it forces you to rethink the things that you take for granted and the objects that you take for granted. Like it's so embedded in your brain what a bedroom chair looks like or what a coat hanger looks like. And once you start questioning that and being like, okay, but how could it be different? It forces you to use so many parts of your brain and kind of go further back down the design tree. And I think what's really cool about that is you realize that all the objects we have around us are mostly just things that people made up. And you can be one of the people that makes those objects up.
Yeah. Yeah. The last question that I wrote that I'll be asking you right now is you were saying, there's kind of inspiration to it. Your content gives me hope. Do things feel hopeful on your end of the table? Like, does the response to the content make you think like this is great, like people are interested in learning and in trying new things, or are we feeling concerned?
I wish I felt more hopeful than I do. I think about it in this way. I used to get into a lot of trouble because I cuss in my videos. Like it's never anything that I think is offensive. Like it's never anything that's derogatory. And I think overall my videos are incredibly wholesome.
Yeah.
And I think something that gives me hope is that you can build a career and be a person that is heard without baiting people's anger. And I see other content creators who are the same. Like, they're really, like, as much as we're fallible and we're navigating being in an incredibly capitalistic environment, it's like we're really trying to be good people in very public positions and communicate good values and good information and everything. And I think that gives me hope that there's like, the internet really rewards the worst of us in a lot of ways. And seeing it also reward really good people gives me hope.
That's great. Can you elaborate a little bit on what's preventing you from reaching this hope peak that maybe you're struggling with?
I mean, the dismantling of scientific institutions is really hard, and all the backsliding and religion taking a center position in policy making is just wild. I think it feels like we are in a time of incredible potential, and we're squandering that potential by backsliding. So I think that's what's preventing me from being hopeful. But also, we humans are inherently humans, and we ebb and flow in how terrible we are. But I think at the core, we mean well, and we deeply care about other beings. I'm just so grateful for the work that people in science do and for the people in science communication. I think it can be incredibly disheartening, and especially realizing that people build their own truth. And even if you have evidence-based good science, people are going to be like, nah. But it's still so incredibly important. So yeah, thanks everybody who's weathering the storm that we're currently in.
Amazing.
Final word from my dog. Here.
Wow. Scraps is his
Scraps.
Name?
Yeah, her name is Scraps.
Aw.
Good job. You did good.
She's great.